Shun Uruma was an ordinary and timid child who stood out only because of his weakness, and that weakness made him a constant target at school. 5 classmates chose him as their source of entertainment, tormenting him daily with beatings, insults, and humiliation that slowly stripped away his sense of self. What began as teasing escalated into cruelty, and cruelty turned into routine violence. Teachers noticed but did nothing. Classmates watched but stayed silent. And Shun learned that suffering could exist openly without consequence. Each day he endured pain quietly, believing that if he stayed silent long enough, it might eventually stop. But it never did. The bullying followed him everywhere, poisoning his thoughts and breaking his spirit, until one day it crossed a point of no return. The same people who laughed while hurting him destroyed his home and shattered his family, leaving death and irreversible damage behind. Shun survived, but survival came at a cost, as his brother was left trapped in an unmoving body, and the warmth of family disappeared forever. In the aftermath, Shun felt no anger, no sadness, only a hollow emptiness that consumed everything inside him. With nowhere else to go, he was taken in by his grandfather, a man shaped by war who believed the world was ruled by strength and cruelty rather than kindness. Instead of offering comfort, his grandfather spoke harsh truths, telling Shun that weakness invites destruction and mercy has no place in reality. He offered Shun a choice without saying it aloud: remain weak and be crushed, or become strong and survive. As Shun listened, something deep within him began to change. The child who once hoped for rescue slowly disappeared, replaced by someone who understood that the world would never be fair. That night marked the end of Shun Uruma's innocence, and the quiet beginning of a path soaked in pain, discipline, and revenge, a path from which there would be no return. Chapter 2: Shun Uruma's life after the tragedy moved forward in silence, not because the pain had healed, but because it had sunk too deep to be expressed. He no longer reacted to the world around him, no longer questioned why things had happened, and no longer expected anything from tomorrow. His grandfather observed this emptiness closely and understood that grief alone would eventually destroy the boy. Having survived war and human brutality, the old man believed that despair could only be fought with purpose, and purpose could only be forged through strength. Without ceremony, he began Shun's training, pushing him into a routine built on exhaustion, discipline, and pain. Shun's body was weak at first, collapsing repeatedly under the strain, but his grandfather offered no sympathy, forcing him to stand again every time he fell. Pain became a daily companion, carving itself into Shun's muscles and bones, while his mind was reshaped through harsh lessons about fear, violence, and control. His grandfather taught him that humans are not ruled by morality, but by power, that fear is the strongest weapon, and that hesitation is the moment when a person loses everything. As the days passed, Shun's physical endurance slowly improved, but the greater change happened within his mind, where anger began to replace emptiness and memory sharpened into focus. The faces of the 5 bullies returned to him clearly, their laughter echoing in his thoughts, as he realized that they continued to live peacefully while his world had been erased. This realization ignited something dangerous inside him, a sense of imbalance that demanded correction. One evening, his grandfather spoke plainly, telling Shun that once a person chooses revenge, they must abandon mercy, and accept that there will be no redemption at the end of the path. Shun listened without hesitation, fully aware that there was nothing left for him to protect and no future waiting beyond his pain. In that moment, he accepted the path before him, not as a victim seeking justice, but as someone who had decided that those responsible for his suffering would one day face the consequences, one by one, without forgiveness. Chapter 3: Time passed, but nothing healed. Shun Uruma's body grew stronger, and his eyes grew colder. The training never stopped, and neither did the memories. Every movement he learned had a purpose. Every strike was meant to end the fight quickly. His grandfather taught him restraint, only so it could be discarded when needed. Strength without intent was meaningless. Intent without hesitation was lethal. Shun returned to school. The same hallways, the same classrooms, the same faces. The 5 bullies were still there. They laughed as before. They spoke loudly, confidently, without fear. They had grown, but not changed. When they saw Shun, they smirked. To them, he was still the same weak boy they once crushed. They believed time had erased the past. They were wrong. Shun watched them carefully. Their habits, their arrogance, their carelessness. He understood now how easily humans exposed themselves when they felt safe. One of them approached him, mocking him openly, reminding him of his place. The others laughed. The same laughter that once broke him. Shun felt nothing. No fear, no anger, only clarity. That night he stood alone, remembering his grandfather's words. Once you take the first step, you cannot return. Mercy creates hesitation. Hesitation leads to defeat. Shun accepted it. The child who endured silently no longer existed. The victim was gone. What remained was someone who would act. Someone who would not stop once it began. The first target had already been chosen, and the countdown to revenge had begun. Chapter 4. Shun did not rush. Revenge required patience. He followed his first target quietly, watched where he went after school, noted the streets he used, the places where no one paid attention. The boy lived without fear. He walked freely, laughed loudly, and trusted the world around him. He never once looked over his shoulder. That carelessness made the decision easier. Shun waited until night. The city grew silent, and shadows stretched across empty streets. This was where weakness revealed itself. When the moment came, Shun did not hesitate. One strike was enough to drop him. Another to make sure he could not run. The fear appeared instantly, raw and uncontrollable. The laughter was gone. The confidence vanished. The boy begged. He denied everything. He pretended not to remember. Shun listened without emotion. He reminded him. Every word, every act, every moment of cruelty that had destroyed his life. The truth finally reached him. This was not bullying anymore. This was consequence. Shun left him broken, alive only long enough to understand why it happened. No witnesses. No noise. As Shun walked away, his hands were steady. His heart was calm. The first step had been taken. There was no guilt. No relief, only certainty. This path would continue. Jūjika no Rokunin. Chapter 5. The next day felt ordinary. Students talked, laughed, and moved on as if nothing had happened. No one noticed what was missing. One of them did not come to school. Rumors started quietly. Excuses followed. Illness, family issues, transfer. No one questioned it deeply. Shun listened without reacting. He sat in his seat, calm and unreadable. Inside, nothing moved. The remaining 4 noticed something else. A feeling they could not explain. A subtle shift in the air. One of them joked about it. Another brushed it off. They convinced themselves nothing was wrong. But fear had already begun its work. Shun watched them closely. Their confidence cracked in small ways. Eyes that lingered longer. Voices that dropped slightly. They sensed it, even if they did not understand it yet. That evening, Shun returned home. His grandfather said nothing. He did not need to. The first step had already proven something important. Revenge did not break Shun. It clarified him. There was no guilt, no hesitation, only direction. Shun prepared for what came next, not with anger, not with excitement, but with patience. 4 remained, and they would not disappear quietly. Chapter 6. Fear finally took shape. The second target noticed it first. Small things felt wrong. Footsteps sounded closer than they should. Silence felt heavier. He started avoiding empty places. He stayed near people. He laughed louder to hide his unease. It did not help. Shun observed from a distance. He learned his routines, the shortcuts he trusted, the places he believed were safe. Safety was an illusion. One evening, the boy took a familiar path home. Streetlights flickered. The road was quiet. Shun stepped out of the shadows. The reaction was immediate. Shock, recognition, pure terror. The boy tried to run. He failed. Pinned down, his confidence shattered completely. He shouted. He begged. He blamed the others. Shun listened in silence. Every excuse sounded the same. Every apology came too late. Shun reminded him of the past, not with emotion, not with anger, only facts. When it was over, Shun walked away without looking back. Another absence would be explained away tomorrow. That night, Shun felt something change again. The fear was no longer his. It belonged to them now. 3 remained. Chapter 7. The balance shifted. 2 were gone, and the silence they left behind was impossible to ignore. Whispers spread faster now. Rumors grew darker. The remaining 3 felt it clearly. This was no coincidence. They began staying together, moving in groups, watching their surroundings with restless eyes. Fear connected them more tightly than friendship ever did. Shun noticed the change. Their smiles were forced, their jokes short-lived. They were no longer predators. They were prey. One of them broke first. Paranoia took control. He accused the others, blamed them for the past, for pushing things too far. The cracks widened. Shun waited. Fear always made people careless, and desperation made them stupid. Late one night, the weakest of the 3 separated from the group. Just for a moment, just long enough, Shun followed. The boy sensed something behind him. He turned. Too late. Panic replaced thought. Words spilled out without control. Confessions, regret, promises. Shun heard everything. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. When the boy finally understood the situation, his voice failed him. He realized this was not about forgiveness. This was about payment. When Shun left, the night was silent again. The pattern was clear now. 2 remained, and they knew it. Chapter 8. Panic set in completely. With 3 gone, denial was no longer possible. The remaining 2 stopped pretending. They knew someone was coming for them. They skipped school. They locked doors. They stayed inside, glued to their phones. Every sound felt threatening. Every shadow felt alive. They talked constantly, trying to convince each other they were safe, that nothing could happen if they stayed together, that the past was over, but the past does not disappear. Shun watched patiently. Fear had already weakened them more than force ever could. They were exhausted, sleepless, unstable. One of them suggested going to the police. The other refused. Too many secrets, too much guilt. Their trust began to rot. That night, an argument exploded between them. Voices raised, accusations thrown, old memories dragged back to the surface. They blamed each other for everything, for the bullying, for what followed, for who they had become. Shun listened from a distance. This was the result of fear without unity. They were destroying themselves. Soon, they would be alone. And alone was where Shun waited. Jūjika no Rokunin. Chapter 9. The night felt heavier than before. Only 2 remained, but they were no longer united. Fear had turned into suspicion. Every word sounded like a lie. Every silence felt dangerous. They stayed together, but distance grew between them. Neither trusted the other anymore. Both believed they might be sacrificed. Shun waited. He did not chase them. He let fear do the work for him. Fear always revealed the truth faster than violence. One of them made a decision. He planned to run, to disappear before it was his turn. He packed quietly. checked the door again and again. His hands would not stop shaking. The moment he stepped outside, reality hit him. Shun was already there. The boy froze. His breath collapsed into shallow gasps. Every excuse he had prepared vanished instantly. He tried to bargain. He blamed the others. He promised silence. Shun did not respond. The past was already decided. Words could not change it. When it ended, the street returned to silence. Another name would soon be whispered. Another disappearance explained away. Shun walked forward without hesitation. Only one remained now. And this time, there would be no confusion. Chapter 10. The last one was alone. No friends. No protection. No excuses left. He stayed inside his house for days. Curtains closed. Phone always in his hand. Every sound from outside made his body tense. Sleep became impossible. When he closed his eyes, memories returned. Laughter. Cruel jokes. A weak boy on the ground. He told himself it was over. That it had all been a game. That none of it mattered anymore. But fear does not listen to lies. Shun watched from a distance. He did not rush. This moment needed time to mature. Fear had already stripped the boy of everything. Confidence was gone. Arrogance erased. What remained was desperation. On the third night, the boy broke. He left the house. Not to escape. Not to fight. To end the waiting. He walked through empty streets, calling out Shun's name with a shaking voice. Apologies spilled out without control. He begged the darkness for an answer. Shun stepped forward. The boy collapsed instantly. Knees hit the ground. Hands pressed together. He confessed everything. Every lie. Every act. Every moment he had enjoyed the suffering of others. Shun listened quietly. This was not justice. This was not forgiveness. This was the end of a path chosen long ago. When it was over, the night returned to silence once again. The revenge was complete. But Shun did not feel relief, only emptiness, because some wounds never close. Chapter 11. Silence followed. The city continued to move as if nothing had changed. People went to school, went to work, lived their lives. 5 names slowly faded from memory. Excuses replaced questions. Time buried the truth. Shun returned to his routine. Training, school, silence. Nothing felt different on the surface. But inside, something had shifted. The anger that once drove him was gone. In its place was a cold emptiness. Not peace, not relief, just absence. His grandfather watched him carefully. He said nothing. He already knew. Revenge does not heal. It only ends. Shun understood that now. The faces that haunted him were gone, but the damage remained. The past could not be erased, only completed. That night, Shun sat alone. No fear followed him. No footsteps chased him. For the first time, there was nothing left to do. The question was no longer about revenge. It was about what comes after. And Shun did not yet have an answer. Chapter 12 days passed slowly. Without enemies left to chase, Shun felt time stretch in uncomfortable ways. Mornings arrived without urgency. Nights arrived without fear. The routine remained the same, but the purpose was gone. He continued training out of habit. His body moved automatically. His mind stayed distant. The strength he had built for revenge now had nowhere to go. At school, everything felt unreal. Desks were filled. Voices echoed. Life continued as if nothing had ever happened. Shun watched people carefully. Their smiles, their complaints, their ordinary worries. Once he believed the world was cruel. Now he realized something worse. The world was indifferent. His grandfather spoke to him that night. Not about revenge, not about strength. He asked a simple question. What will you do now? Shun did not answer. For the first time, he felt uncertainty. Not fear, not anger. Emptiness mixed with confusion. Revenge had given him direction. Without it, he stood still. As he lay awake, Shun understood one thing clearly. This story was not over. It had only reached a different kind of beginning.